welcome to Dynaudio's Ask the Expert. We're live from HIGH END in Munich 2019. With me I have someone we know really well on the program, Otto Jørgensen, our product manager for Home Hi-Fi. He has Ashley Shepherd in the studio too, and if you've ever seen Dynaudio Unheard, you have met this man. He's our head producer, making sure that the final mixes sound stunning. Throughout our first 2.5 days here at HIGH END, we've been collecting questions for these two gentlemen on two subjects. Obviously, Home Hi-Fi and our technologies for Otto, and questions about what it is like to be a producer, to produce music, and to be part of Dynaudio Unheard for Ashley. Guys, are you ready?
Always.
Ready to go.
Perfect. Otto, the first question is primarily for you. It's, what are we showing here at HIGH END? Is there any news?
Well, what you're showing this year is first and foremost the Evoke series, which is quite new, a mid-range series from Dynaudio, using a lot of technology from our higher-end ranges, Confidence and Contour. We've managed to bring those into a more affordable range, really nice-looking range, nice set of finishes and sizes. Other than this, we will be mostly playing on the new Confidence series, especially the Confidence 30, which we will be showing in the listening room. You can go up and hear it.
And before we started filming, you two were talking a little bit about something called the hexes. I know that's something we use in both home hi-fi and professional products. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the hexes is inner dome inside the tweeter dome, which we developed basically for Confidence. And since we developed Confidence and Evoke in parallel, we were able to bring that technology into the Evoke as well. So what it does is it sits just below the tweeter dome. It disperses the sound that comes back from the tweeter dome, so it doesn't reflect back into the dome and distorts the sound. It also directs the airflow into the back chamber of the tweeter, which also helps lower the resonance frequency of the tweeter, again lowering distortion, especially the lower end of the tweeter's frequency range.
One of the other questions that we got from our visitors here at HIGH END, Otto, is why are there these small holes in the diaphragm?
Yeah, this is a question we get quite often, actually. If you look at the front of our woofers, you will see what looks like holes, but they're not actually holes. They're cavities, which stems from the fact that on the backside you have some tabs that we use for gluing the voice coil onto the diaphragm. So the cavities are actually on the backside of that. So why do we have these dimples on the back? There are two reasons for it. When we are gluing the voice coil onto the diaphragm, because of these tabs, you always have it centered. You can't really move the voice coil relative to the diaphragm. It also gives a higher surface area when we are gluing the voice coil onto the diaphragm. The surface area between those two parts will be larger. That makes much higher power handling, so you can play much louder without affecting that, that gluing position. Yeah.
So no holes, but cavities.
Only cavities, yes.
And it's a single piece, right? So
yeah,
instead of the dust cover being separate with a different material with glue, this is the signature Dynaudio woofer material.
Exactly. It comes from the fact that it's a one-piece vacuum molded process. So it starts out as one piece of MSP, which basically look like a piece of paper. So that's vacuum formed. And when you're vacuum forming those dimples on the backside, you'll get these cavities.
I think that's great because it's a stiffer thing. It's less different materials in the woofer. It's more consistent, is my understanding.
Yeah, the more assemblies you have between different types of materials, and the more gluing areas you have, the more places something can go wrong and create distortions, and errors in the sound.
I like it.
Good.
I like the dimples.
The next question is one I would love to get both of your perspective on. One of our guests, how should I put it, noticed that sometimes there might be a disconnect between musicians on the one hand and high-end hi-fi on the other. One of the things he pointed out was when you see musicians listening to their own recordings on high-end equipment, they often find new things in their music that they hadn't heard before. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's your point of view on it?
Well, I think since I work with musicians all the time, I might be able to speak to this to start with, which is musicians, they have a job to do, and everything surrounding performing live and even in the studio is very pragmatic. In other words, we need to hear ourselves play clearly so that we can perform correctly, in tune, and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of professional sound reinforcement equipment is designed with that express purpose in mind, not necessarily a hi-fi purpose, because the technology needs to be a little different. So when a musician gets a chance to really listen on an incredible hi-fi system like the Confidence, their eyes kind of open because they hear all these details in the music that they might imagine exist, but it's not very often that they get a chance to actually hear it. So when that experience happens, you can see it in their eyes. They sort of go, oh, wow, that's the magic. It feels good. It's all an emotional transference. So if the expression they put in their vocal, say, for example, it comes across in extreme detail in the hi-fi speaker, they realize that their message has been conveyed to the audience. And that, for an artist, is the ultimate experience. They know they're speaking to their audience. They're communicating the emotion via music through the speaker properly, so that all the details are heard.
One thing I noticed is that I do a lot of demos for a lot of types of people. So what do we call our normal customers or distributors, dealers? They get the same reaction, especially when I'm playing for someone who is not used to listening to a high-end hi-fi show. You get exactly that reaction. They open their eyes and say, wow, I did not know that music could sound like this. And I think it's really interesting that very often I get the same reaction when musicians come in and listen to a system like that. It's exactly the same reaction as the customers. I think that means that when you are creating the music, you really should take this into account. Make sure that we are hearing what's actually on the record, because we are presenting that to the listener, given that they are buying proper speakers, of course.
Of course.
The next question is about the chain that we have fully represented here, because we're recording the music from, the beginning on high-end equipment. I mean, we have DPA mics in the recording studio, DAD equipment, all the way over to the control room, where we, of course, have our own professional studio monitors. And then we can reproduce the music on our own speakers in the showroom. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having quality gear throughout that chain?
Certainly. Well, in the beginning, we make sound in the air. And then we have to convert that sound into electricity in order to manipulate it, to record it, to change it or alter it or refine it. And the first step in the chain is the microphone. And the microphone is very similar to a speaker. It's a transducer. We're transducing acoustic information into electrical information so that we can go through the mixing process. And then when we come back to the speaker, it's the reverse. We're going to actually use electricity to transduce into acoustic information. So for me, these are the two most important pieces of equipment in any recording chain. We can talk about the middle parts, but the transducers at the beginning and the transducer at the end, the speakers, those are the most important steps in the process. And the DPA microphones are at the top of the line of their type of transducer, and the Dynaudio is at the top of the line of the other kind of transducer. And the sum result of this is the clarity in recording. Everything we record here comes out just the way it sounds. So we don't have to worry about compensating for the microphone or the speaker. We just work on the guitar or the drums. Then we know when we capture that sound, we're capturing truth. So it makes it much easier, I have to say.
I think you can really tell if you go to our booth this year, and we have a demo where we're showing a track that we played in this studio just this Tuesday.
Yes.
You made a really great mix of that.
Thank you.
So you can really tell there's a very direct sound. You really get close to the musicians from that demo. So I encourage anyone to go there and have that experience.
Well, and the cool thing in that demo is you actually get to see it. I mean, you see the video shot of the actual recording that you're listening to. It's not, faked out. It's the real recording that we did. You can see it.
Yes, what we also do in that demo is actually play it back with the video, and the next thing we do is turn the TV off, play the track again. So that means now it's up to your mind to take that audio information and visualize that and put that together into your head to kind of visualize those people in the recording studio playing.
Very cool.
Yeah, that is a cool effect, yeah.
Well, it's nice. When you take away the video, your brain no longer has to worry about the visual information, which takes a lot of brain processing.
Yes.
And it's like blind people who expand their hearing as a result of the loss of sense. So if they're not watching video and all they're doing is listening, it's amplified. There's more detail that can be processed, I think, by the brain. At least this is the way I think about it.
Yes, I think in a lot of ways it's cool that you can create that kind of illusion from the recordings you're making in this studio.
Good transducers.
Of course.
One thing that stuck with me in what you were saying, Ashley, is that it's become a little bit easier with the way technology has progressed over the last couple of decades even. If in somebody's mind you take that ease of use, that could translate into some kind of complacency. Well, it's easier, so we get quicker to the final result and don't put that much more effort into it. Is that how it is today? Or what do you do as a producer to use the ease of use to, produce higher quality work?
Well, I think there's two sides to that story. All the digital technology in between the transducers. Now we're talking about the mixers and the recording and all that. That has gotten much easier and much less expensive. So it's more affordable for people to get a laptop and record in their bedroom or record live. Most live shows that you see now are all being recorded. So there's two sides of the coin. One side is, yes, it's much easier so people can maybe record something that probably didn't need to be recorded, or they don't take the time to refine it because there's no sense of importance because of the amount of money and time you're spending. It's just easy, so who cares? But then the flip side of that is, because it's so easy, let's capture things that we were not able to capture before. Performances in odd locations, like in the middle of a convention in the middle of Munich. Now it's affordable and we can do this, or we have the technology to bring here easily. So now we can record in exotic locations or in different locations, which can be inspiring to the musicians and bring about a different recording. The other side of that coin is it doesn't make it easier in the long run when you're making a great record. You really have to pay attention to the performances. You can't just schlock through it just because it's easy. You have to take the time and get the performances the way you want them and perfect everything and make decisions. It's a lot of this technology is allowing producers to stave off the decisions until later. Let's just record a bunch of stuff and we'll figure it out in the mix. And that's fine. But when you consciously make a decision about what you're recording at the moment, I find that you can get much better results in the end, even though it might be easier to do it the other way. So,
you're the music guy and I'm the product guy. What you're saying makes me think of one thing actually in the product development process. When we created Jupiter, our measuring room, that makes it possible to do very, very high quality measurements really, really fast. So what used to take several days now takes 20 minutes. And that doesn't mean that it's much easier to build loudspeakers. It means that we find more problems to solve. But the upside is we can make a lot of measurements, to do more with it, like you said. With it's kind of analogous to what you're mentioning. Instead of making it easier, it just means we can do a lot of things we couldn't do before.
Exactly.
And make the end result better. So as long as we're doing that on the music side as well, I guess everyone's happy.
Well, I know the comments that I hear about the core speakers in the professional world, it's something's doing right. You're doing the right thing. Because people are like, wow, this is... I just heard today a guy out at a Hollywood studio, I can't even use the language he used because he was pretty blown away. And he's like, holy bloop, bloop, bloop. I knew there was going to be a difference between the old Air series and the new Core series, but he's like, I didn't expect this, how much better it is. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
I think that's really interesting, because I heard that comment also from other people listening to it for the first time and saying, wow, what did you do? It's like, we didn't actually do anything other than make it sound as good as possible. There are no tricks in there. It's just a good product that sounds good. So getting that appreciation, both in the studio world and at home, that's really what we're looking for.
It feels good. It's like you're getting back.
Yeah.
So we're getting higher quality across the board because of new technologies. That's the essence of it.
Yes.
Essentially, yes.
Perfect. One of the things that you were doing here earlier this morning, Ashley, was stacking the music together with the artist Change Habits. When you have an artist like Change Habits, who is a multi-instrumentalist, he played basically all of the instruments himself. Mm-hmm. How do you go about creating the illusion even that this was played by a bunch of musicians, all positioned differently in the sound stage?
Well, there's two approaches to this. A lot of times, modern records are not realistic. They're illusory to begin with. The idea is we're creating a fanciful illusion, something that wouldn't exist in reality, but we want to make it artistically pleasing, like a Dali painting. It's not real, but it's lovely, right? So there's that. And that is painting with a different set of tools. If you're trying to create the illusion of a cohesive band performance, then we have all sorts of digital tools now that allow us to emulate actual acoustic spaces, where we go into, say, the Vienna Opera Hall, and we set up a bunch of microphones and we run specific tones through the room and record that to capture the signature sound of that room. And then we can go back and place the sound sources that we've recorded here, say in the Unheard studio, but position them within this digitally recreated matrix of the acoustics of the Vienna Hall, and all of a sudden, there's the illusion.
I think one of the things that's really cool is when you create that illusion without losing anything in the process. You know, if it's not done at the right quality, what you get is just feels artificial. I think if in a lot of ways, when it's done really good, the listener doesn't notice that it's being done digitally. And I think that's where the magic really happens when you reach that illusion. Actually, I have a question for you about that. You mentioned the beginning and the end. You know, the microphone and the speaker. In a hi-fi system, we also care a lot about what happens in between in the electronics, the DA converters and stuff like that. How much do you value that in the studio?
Extremely. In the Unheard studio, we use a product from DAD, the DAD AX32, which is essentially our audio core. That's where the electrical signals from the microphone get converted to digital and also converted back again to analog if we need it. And that piece of equipment is stunning. I can't say enough about it. It doesn't interfere. All it does is facilitate. In other words, whatever you put into it, it comes through clear. There's no coloration by the mic preamps. That's a big part of the recording process, is going from the microphone up to line level before we actually convert to digital. That's a big step, like a phono preamp. Same kind of idea. And the preamps in the DAD are just fantastic, top of the line. But, you know, we also have to have excellent quality cable to carry those signals to the mic preamps. Once we're into the DAD, everything becomes digital, and we run it over a network, a Wave SoundGrid network, and some MADI connections. So once we're into the network, we're safe. We've converted it to digital. Of course, we have to be very careful with it, but it makes it very flexible and easy for us to route 60 channels over to the control room room and another 20 or 30 back over here to facilitate the headphones. We get a lot of routing going on. So all the same concerns are there. In the case of the core speakers, we feed digital signals into the core, AES digital, directly into the speaker, which eliminates a lot of issues with cabling and separate power amps. That's more the professional approach to things. I know in the home hi-fi, there's a lot of passive speakers, and then the speaker cable becomes incredibly important. For us, we've
and COs and Focus
cable.
XDs, which have digital input, of course, just to mention those.
Oh, good. I like the digital input.
Guys, you've been talking a lot about, the importance of transducers, what goes on between the transducers. But what about the medium that we carry those signals, the final step of the way, CDs, streaming today. Today here at Unheard, we have our own streaming partner, Qobuz. What is your take on that medium?
Well, I can start out. I think that's a really important part of it, like what you said with all of these conversions and stuff. If you don't bring that quality to the consumer, it doesn't matter what's in each end of this. So we need to bring the quality out. The good thing about streaming today that a few years ago, streaming was almost a curse word in the hi-fi business. If it's streaming, it's lower quality. Today, actually streaming is the better quality. That's the way to get master audio quality out to as many listeners as possible, and Qobuz supports completely uncompressed audio, or lossless compressed, so there's no loss along the way from the studio to the listener. And I think that's really elevating the sound quality in the end. I think that's the way to get the best possible quality for the end consumer.
Well, and it's a technology in its infancy, if we think about it. I mean, Spotify is, maybe iTunes or whatever, has been around for a while, but now Qobuz bringing us uncompressed full bandwidth, it warms my heart, because we spend a lot of time in the studio and we're running at full resolution all the time, even crazy sample rates like 192 kilohertz. And to have the ability to deliver a master quality to the consumer, it allows me to breathe easy. I don't have to go, oh gosh, what's this going to sound like once it goes through iTunes? I'm a mastering engineer. I do a lot of mastering, and you have to be qualified for the iTunes platform, you actually have to run it through their conversion process to see what it's going to do. And I'm like, well, that defeats the point. I don't want it to do anything. I want to deliver my product to the consumer directly.
Yes.
And the Qobuz and that technology allows me to do that. I'm very grateful for that.
Final question, guys. In your mind, what is the most important thing people need to know about what we're doing here in these shipping containers with Dynaudio Unheard?
Well, I think the important thing to realize is that music these days is a very crowded world. Everybody can put their stuff up on YouTube, and it makes for a very crowded and dense world. So some artists don't get a chance to be heard the way they should, or they don't have the opportunity to record in a studio like this. So what we do with Dynaudio Unheard is we take the studio to them. We go on location in various cities across the world and bring in artists that have not been heard before, the unheard artists, and we give them a chance to record professionally here with the video crew, and also in the studio we make recordings of their music in a very high quality fashion, and it takes them a whole step up. So when they get through with the Unheard experience, they have the rights to all of these recordings, the videos, the audio recordings, even the multi-track recording sessions that I do. They're given to the artists to do with as they please. And so this is Dynaudio's way of giving back to the artists whose music comes through the speakers that they make. So that's really the whole gig with Unheard, is to bring artists that otherwise would not be heard to the forefront and give them a chance to create some very high quality art.
Thank you. From my point of view, being the product guy, it reminds me why we make these products. I mean, this is why we make loudspeakers, is to get the music from the musicians out to people. We want people's music to be heard. The music touches us. That is why we are in this business. I've had some incredible experiences with so many musicians we've had here, both from recording here, Dawn recording or playing in the demo booth and stuff like this.
Cool.
That was really, really cool. You know, everyone had goosebumps. I might be caught on video almost crying. That was really an incredible experience. This is why we do this. This is, you know, the product, the loudspeaker. That's the instrument to get the music out to people. We always have this in mind when we create the products, even in the development processes in Skanderborg, which might seem quite technical. We always have this in the back of our mind, and Unheard helps us remind us that's what it's all about, the music.
Thank you so much, guys. Otto Jørgensen, product manager, Ashley Shepherd, head producer, Dynaudio Unheard. Thank you for taking time out and answering our questions. Finally, thank you to everyone who dropped off a question in our letterbox or at the showroom here at HIGH END Munich. Well, I'm gonna let you guys get back to whatever you're doing for the rest of the day.